She had no idea I caught her slipping her wedding ring off before we stepped into that party. I wasn't supposed to be watching. I was fumbling with my jacket zipper, digging around for the house keys, doing everything I could to keep us from being late again. But when I turned around to ask if she'd grabbed the gift for her boss, there she was at the hallway mirror, twisting the band off her finger in one smooth motion and tucking it deep into the side pocket of that sparkly gold clutch. I went rigid. She caught me staring. Our eyes locked. She blinked once, flashed a smile, and said, "All set?" I mumbled something like, "Yeah," nodded, and trailed her out into the cold. The drive to the hotel was filled with a kind of silence I had no idea how to break. I kept my eyes glued to the traffic lights, pretending everything was normal. My throat felt like sandpaper. I asked whether she was anxious about the presentation that evening, and she said, "Not one bit." That was probably the first moment I truly understood something had shifted deep down, because Vivian was always anxious. She used to rehearse conversations in the shower. She once spent an entire rideshare practicing how to greet a vice president with a casual good morning. But that night she was breezy, effortless, like I wasn't even sitting beside her. We showed up late, naturally. The ballroom was already humming, soft jazz drifting through the air, shimmering gowns everywhere, laughter that sounded a touch too polished. I carried both our coats. She walked 5 steps ahead of me as though I were her chauffeur. Every so often she'd glance back, give me a half smile, and wave me toward her like she was flagging down a server. Then it happened. We were near the dessert spread. Well, I was standing there by myself, awkward and untethered, when she walked over carrying 2 glasses of wine. She held one out to me like she was doing me a favor, then scanned the room, searching for someone. I tried to do something small, something human, something a husband would do. I reached over and gently took her hand. She flinched. "And I swear on everything," she whispered. "Don't let anyone here think we're together. Not with anger, not with shame, with strategy. Like being seen with me was a liability." I laughed like an idiot, like a man still trying to convince himself this was some kind of mix-up. Then I set my glass down. I straightened my back and said loud enough for her, and probably everyone within 6 feet to hear, "From this moment on, we're not." She blinked, smirked, didn't say a word, and as I turned to walk away, I noticed a man in a dark green suit watching us. Watching too closely. Want to know who he was? I'll get to that. Trust me. He wasn't some random guest. I barely made it through the hotel lobby before I doubled back. Not because I wanted to return to her. God, no. But because something about that guy in the green suit, the way he'd nodded at me, set off an alarm. You know that gut feeling you push aside because you're terrified of what it might confirm? That one. It kicked in hard. I planted myself behind a fake potted tree like a complete fool, watching through the glass as she drifted over to him. She didn't walk. She floated, as if some invisible thread had been pulling her toward him all evening. He didn't smile when she reached him. He barely looked surprised. She just leaned in close, whispered something near his ear, and his hand settled on her lower back like it had always belonged there. I thought I was going to be sick. I left. I didn't have the stomach to watch anymore. I sat in my car in the parking garage for 2 hours trying to talk myself into believing I'd misread the whole thing. Maybe it was a work friend. Maybe I was just insecure. But here's the reality. When a man starts making excuses for why his wife hid her ring and told people they weren't a couple, he's not insecure. He's just catching up to the truth. When she got home later that night, she smelled like champagne and a fragrance that wasn't hers. I asked how the party ended, and she said, "You didn't miss much." Didn't miss much. I missed the part where my marriage stopped pretending to exist. I missed the truth, and I knew I wasn't going to get it from her. The next morning, I called in sick. She assumed I was home sleeping it off. In reality, I was sitting in a coffee shop searching the internet for how to find out if your spouse is cheating without tipping them off. I didn't want a scene. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted facts. And the facts arrived faster than I expected. She'd left her tablet on the kitchen counter before heading out to Pilates. The screen lit up with a message preview from a contact saved as L. One line. "Last night was electric. We should have done this a long time ago. I didn't even have to guess. I tapped the notification, and what unfolded in front of me was months. Months of flirting, scheming, secret meetups, and hotel bookings charged to a corporate card she once told me was strictly for emergencies. Every tender word she stopped saying to me, she had been handing to someone else. Every evening she came home drained. She had actually been energized by another man. And the kicker, this L, wasn't just anyone. He was married too. I had no clue yet just how deep the betrayal ran, or how many lies she'd stacked on top of each other to keep it hidden. But I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. Not until I had everything. Because my next move wasn't going to be emotional. It was going to be surgical. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table staring at the tablet. Every message felt like a blade, but I kept reading. Not because I wanted to punish myself, but because I needed proof. Every reservation, every heart eyes emoji, every late meeting that supposedly ran long. I cross-referenced all of it against my own calendar. While I was at home doing laundry, she was at a rooftop cocktail bar with him. While I was shoveling snow off our driveway in a blizzard, she was spending the night in a business suite downtown, in a bed we didn't share, with a man who called her my little fox. Yeah, little fox. I still have no idea what that's supposed to mean, but he said it constantly. She loved it. She was sending him selfies from hotel bathrooms, full-length mirror shots, things I hadn't seen in years. I tried to remember the last time she'd sent me anything even slightly playful, probably 2018. And even then, it was just a love you too, with zero emotion. I screenshotted everything, backed it all up to a flash drive, then 2 more. I wasn't sure yet what I was going to do with any of it, but I knew I had to protect the truth. She had already been rewriting our reality inside those messages. I was not going to let her do it again in court, if it ever came to that. I knew that confronting her right then would only lead to disaster. Tears, deflection, probably some line like, "It didn't mean anything," or "You pulled away first," or my personal favorite, "You made me feel invisible." And the worst part? I might have believed her, because that's how I'm wired. I question myself more than I question other people, but not this time. Instead, I played dumb, smiled, asked how Pilates went. She said, "Intense." I nearly choked on my coffee. For the next few days, I carried on as the same old Nathan, packed her lunch, asked about her meetings, gave her space, exactly as much as she always said she needed. But behind the scenes, I was preparing. Quietly, methodically. I met with a lawyer someone at work had recommended. I laid everything out, flash drives and all. He didn't say much at first, just scrolled through the screenshots and muttered, "She's bold." Then he told me something that changed everything. Vivian had quietly restructured our joint account 6 months earlier, set it up so she could access our emergency savings without requiring both signatures. He pulled the paperwork. My name had been signed electronically, but it wasn't me. It was forged. And the bank let it sail right through. Vivian had drained nearly $28,000. When I asked where the transfers went, the lawyer said one word: Venmo. Thousands, parceled out in casual-looking payments. The labels read things like yoga retreat deposit, business dinner split, cab share, and the final one, private reservation, full balance. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there in that office staring at the transaction list as if it belonged to somebody else's life, somebody more naive, somebody blind. But I wasn't blind anymore. She hadn't just betrayed me emotionally. She'd robbed me. She'd staged a coup on our entire life while I was still folding her bath towels and picking up her oat milk. I asked the lawyer one question. If I stay calm and quiet, can we take everything from her? He smiled. If you're patient, Nathan, we can do worse. That was the first time I felt something that wasn't heartbreak. It was strategy. You know what's strange? Once I stopped grieving over her, I started noticing things I'd ignored for years. Like how often Vivian would vanish on business weekends and never come back with a single receipt. Or how she always had freshly done nails when we were supposedly too broke to fix the leak in the ceiling. Little cracks I'd patched over with trust now looked like gaping sinkholes. Every one of them screamed the same thing. She'd been planning this far longer than I'd known. I didn't want to keep living like a victim, so I did something I never imagined I would. I called someone I hadn't spoken to in 6 years, Vivian's former best friend, Ramona. They'd had a falling out a while back over something I was never given the full story on. Vivian called her a jealous burnout. Ramona, however, picked up on the first ring and said, "Took you long enough." That's how the conversation started. Her second sentence was, "I warned her this would blow up in her face someday." She didn't even sound angry. She sounded amused, like she'd been waiting for me to connect the dots. When I asked whether she knew who L was, she laughed so hard she had to put the phone down. "L," she finally said, "is Lucas Hargrove. Her ex from before you." I froze. "Wait, Lucas? The one who moved to Denver?" "Not anymore," she said. "He moved back last year. Guess she forgot to mention that." It felt like someone had filled my lungs with concrete. Lucas wasn't just an ex. He was the one she used to say had destroyed her. The toxic one. The man she'd cried over during our first year of dating when she thought I was asleep. The guy she swore she would never speak to again. And he was back. And she had run straight into his arms as though the last decade had never happened. It got worse. Ramona told me the real reason they'd stopped speaking. She had caught Vivian messaging Lucas behind my back years earlier and called her out. Vivian denied everything and cut Ramona out of her life completely. So no, this wasn't new. Vivian hadn't stumbled into an affair. She'd been orbiting this man like a satellite waiting for a signal. By that point, I knew what had to be done. The lawyer helped me pull credit reports, mortgage activity, and property records. And surprise. Vivian had co-signed a luxury apartment lease 3 months prior through a shell LLC. Guess who the other tenant was? Lucas Hargrove. So while I was at home stress washing the deck and comparing quotes for roof repairs, Vivian was building an entire second life with a man she'd sworn she hated. The next stretch was tricky. I needed her to stay completely in the dark about what I knew. I needed her to believe she was still in control, so I became the model husband again, complimented her hair, offered to run errands, even put together a playlist for her commute. She started smiling more, let her guard drop. And while she was busy writing her happy ending, I was writing something very different, an exit plan so clean, so ruthless, and so legally airtight that even Lucas wouldn't see it coming. Vivian thought she had everything figured out. She thought I was still clueless, still orbiting her like some loyal, broken moon. But I had stopped being her safety net the second I found out about the apartment, the second I found out about him. And it was time she learned that I don't just fold laundry and disappear quietly. I set a trap. I invited her to dinner at her favorite French restaurant, the same one where I'd proposed to her 10 years ago. I even made sure we got the same booth. Corner seat, low lighting, good wine. I wore the shirt she once said made me look less like a librarian. I brought flowers, real ones. No irony. She smiled when she sat down. That practiced, perfectly calibrated smile she reserves for colleagues or courtroom mediations. "You're being sweet," she said like it was a surprise. I just nodded and told her I wanted the evening to feel special. Then I texted the guest. Lucas walked in 13 minutes later. I watched Vivian's entire soul leave her body when she saw him cross the room. Her smile died mid-sentence. She went pale, not the nervous kind, the cornered animal kind. She didn't say his name. Didn't even breathe. Just stared at me like I'd detonated a bomb under the table. "Sit," I said to Lucas, who looked like he'd just walked into a deposition. He didn't say much either. Just slid into the booth across from her and adjusted his cufflinks, clearly wishing he were anywhere else. That's when I placed the envelope on the table. I didn't shout, I didn't accuse. I just set it down dead center and said, "Inside are the screenshots, the transfers, the signed lease, the dates and times you both forgot to delete from your phones." Vivian still didn't speak, so I continued. "I also have a statement from your former friend Ramona, confirming this has been going on far longer than either of you would dare admit. And I have a lawyer who has already filed paperwork for financial misconduct and marital fraud." Lucas finally blinked. Vivian just stared at the tablecloth like it might save her. But I wasn't finished. "You drained our account. You lied to my face. And you put everything we built on the line so you could play house with a man who used to make you cry into your pillow while I pretended to be asleep." Vivian opened her mouth. Maybe to apologize, maybe to scream. But I raised my hand. "This isn't a confrontation. It's a courtesy. I'm giving you a heads up before everything you've constructed comes crashing down. I stood. But before I walked away, I leaned in and whispered something just for her. Oh, and you should probably let Lucas know the other person I invited tonight was his wife. Vivian looked like she was about to collapse. Lucas shot to his feet so fast he knocked over his wine glass. I walked out before the shouting began, but the fallout, that was only getting started. I figured she'd go quiet after that dinner. I thought maybe, just maybe, she'd do what most guilty people do when they realize they've lost. Lay low, cooperate, try to preserve whatever dignity is left. But no, Vivian didn't retreat. She retaliated. 3 days after the restaurant, I got served, right there at my job in front of 2 coworkers and a bewildered delivery driver, a thick manila envelope plastered with her name, Vivian Hargrove. She had apparently already started changing her last name back to his, as if I were just some awkward layover in her glamorous love story. Inside the envelope, a countersuit. She claimed I had been emotionally neglectful, unavailable, passive-aggressive, and manipulative, and that she had no choice but to seek comfort elsewhere. And the cherry on top, she was demanding spousal support. Spousal support from me. The same woman who had emptied our emergency fund for weekend getaways was now saying she deserved a monthly payment for loss of lifestyle. I burst out laughing at my desk in the middle of a staff meeting. My manager asked if everything was okay. I said, "Oh yeah, just got asked to pay someone for cheating on me." Totally normal Wednesday. I wasn't just shocked. I was impressed. She was bold, almost arrogant. And I realized something critical right then. Vivian had no idea how far I'd gone. She thought I only knew about the messages in the affair. She thought this was still a war of words and blame. She had no idea I'd already handed everything to a forensic accountant. That guy, Edwin, was worth every cent. He'd combed through 2 years of Vivian's financial activity. What he found wasn't just evidence of cheating. It was tax fraud, corporate card abuse, multiple Venmo accounts under fake usernames. And get this, she'd been logging those hotel stays as client meetings and billing them to her firm. Edwin compiled a 43-page report. My lawyer delivered it to her attorney before the first hearing. The silence that followed was beautiful, like the first snowfall after a storm. But the real twist came the night before our court date. Vivian showed up at my door. No text, no call, just her standing in the rain with mascara streaming down her face and her voice cracked and soft like something out of a twisted romantic comedy. She said, "Can we talk? Please?" Now, I know what you're thinking. I should have slammed the door, let her drown in the consequences of her own arrogance. But I let her in, not because I wanted her back. God, no. Because I wanted to see what kind of performance she thought would still work on me. She sat on the couch like a stranger, said she didn't want things to end this way, said Lucas had turned cold since the dinner, that he blamed her for the fallout, that she felt alone and used. I listened, sipping my tea, letting her spin her sad little tale. Then she dropped it. "What if we try again? You and me. Start fresh. We don't need the lawyers." I almost choked. This woman had burned our marriage to the ground, danced in the ashes with another man, sued me, and now showed up expecting me to take her back, like I was some pathetic doormat sitting by the entrance with open arms. I stood up, walked to the closet, and pulled out the one thing I'd been saving for exactly this moment, a printed copy of the financial report. All 43 pages. I handed it to her and said, "If I ever doubted I was being used, this confirmed it." She flipped through the first few pages. Her hands were shaking. "You're going to ruin me," she whispered. "No," I said. "You already did that yourself. I just made sure it was documented." She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She simply walked out, quieter than I've ever seen her. That was when I knew she had finally realized she'd lost control. I wish I could say walking into that courtroom felt like justice. It didn't. It felt like stepping into a war zone I hadn't started, but somehow still had to survive. Vivian was already seated when I arrived. Her lawyer was whispering something in her ear. She looked polished, composed, like this was just another negotiation she planned to win. Like she hadn't torched our marriage, humiliated me, and tried to walk away with a monthly reward. But behind that calm face I could see it. The nervous twitch in her eye. The foot that wouldn't stop bouncing under the table. She knew something was coming. She just didn't know how bad. The judge got straight to the point. Evidence was presented. My lawyer read our financial timeline like it was a crime novel. The fake Venmo accounts, the falsified expense reports to her firm, the shell company tied to the lease she'd signed with Lucas. Each fact landed like a punch. Vivian tried to hold it together, but the cracks were spreading. Then came the witness. My lawyer had called someone I never expected to see again. Lucas's wife. His real wife. It turned out Lucas had never told her about Vivian. She found out from the dinner confrontation I'd orchestrated and had since filed for divorce. But what really sealed it? She handed over screenshots of messages Vivian had sent him going back even further than I'd known. Some were 3 years old, sent while Vivian and I were on vacation celebrating our 8th anniversary. 3 years. The courtroom went silent. The judge looked visibly uncomfortable reading some of the messages. Vivian tried to object, claiming it was private correspondence. The judge didn't buy it. Her lawyer's confidence shattered. They requested a recess. It was denied. But just when I thought it couldn't get more absurd, Vivian made her final move. She asked to speak. No one stopped her, probably because everyone wanted to hear what kind of fantasy she'd try to sell this time. She stood, looked the judge in the eye and said, "I made mistakes. But my husband neglected me emotionally for years. I felt invisible. That's why I drifted. He stopped touching me. He was obsessed with work, with routine. I needed affection." The judge asked if she had any proof. She didn't, because there wasn't any. What she didn't expect was that I did. Emails, handwritten notes, voice messages, the love letters I wrote her on our anniversaries, a printed itinerary for a couple's getaway I'd booked 2 months before she started sleeping with Lucas. The trip she canceled at the last minute because of a migraine. I gave all of it to my lawyer, who presented it like the final nail in a very expensive coffin. Vivian sat down. Said nothing else. She knew. The judge didn't deliberate long. Not only was spousal support denied, the court awarded me partial reimbursement for misappropriated funds. She would be responsible for repaying a portion of what she'd taken, plus attorney fees. Her reputation at work was already circling the drain. My lawyer had quietly notified her firm about the fraudulent expenses. Strategically. The disciplinary hearing was already in motion. Outside the courtroom, she didn't look at me. Just walked past, shoulders tight, lips sealed. I should have felt triumphant, but all I felt was empty. 10 years. 10 years. And all it took to unravel everything was a lie she told herself. That I was boring. That Lucas was excitement and that she could get away with it. I didn't celebrate right away. No champagne, no "I told you so" moment. No petty social media posts. To be honest, I just went home and sat in the living room surrounded by silence. But for the first time in months, that silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like peace. Vivian moved out of our house 2 weeks later. She left behind a few things, old scarves, some cookbooks she never used, and a cracked photo frame from our 5th anniversary. I didn't throw any of it out. I packed it into a box and left it at the front desk of her new apartment. No note, no explanation, just a quiet goodbye. The fallout hit her fast. She was placed on administrative leave at her firm pending a formal investigation into the expenses. Lucas ghosted her entirely. I heard through the grapevine that he skipped town again, and this time his ex-wife wasn't so forgiving. Vivian, the woman who once acted like she held every card in the deck, was suddenly the one standing alone. But this story isn't about her anymore. A few months after the dust settled, I decided to do something I'd been putting off for years. I booked a trip, just for me. No anniversary excuse, no "we need a break" compromise, just something for myself. A quiet cabin near a lake in Vermont. I brought books, my old camera, and 1 suitcase. I turned off my phone for 5 days. For the first time in forever, I remembered what it felt like to breathe without bracing for the next blow. And then, something unexpected happened. On the last night of my trip, I met someone. No dramatic sparks, no love at first sight fairy tale, just a conversation by a campfire with someone who asked me, "What's the kindest thing you've done for yourself this year?" I didn't even have an answer at first. I just laughed, awkward and still a little raw. But that question stuck with me. The kindest thing I'd done. I stopped holding on to someone who had let go of me a long time ago. Now, months later, I'm not bitter. I'm not angry. I'm rebuilding. Slowly, but honestly. I joined a local photography group. I started hiking again. And yeah, I still overthink everything and pair my socks neatly because that's just who I am. But I'm okay. To anyone out there feeling small, feeling betrayed, feeling like you've become invisible in your own marriage, don't wait for someone else to rescue you. Don't beg for the bare minimum. Get your truth. Get your clarity. And walk. Not because you're petty, because you deserve better. Thanks for listening. If my story hit you in any way, leave a comment on Reddit Stories, GG. You're not alone, and if you're healing, I'm right there with you.